Welcome to the Beyond Physio Podcast. I'm Dr. Jerry Yu, CEO and founder of MST Physio. On my show today, I have a guest, Jon Frey, who was with us. And Jon's going to talk all about his history as an ultra runner, as a race director, and as a vegan, and healing transitions and the Oakwood 24, which is a massive support network for people recovering from all sorts of substance abuse. And here we go. Welcome to the Beyond Physio Podcast, where we help you move, excel, and inspire others on your journey to your next level with knowledge and advice from experts and testimonials from our like-minded community. Jon, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Thanks for having me.
Jon, your reputation precedes you. You are an amazing runner. You have done some amazing things to help people from various backgrounds. You have this amazing race called the Oakwood 24. I want to dive into how you got to where you are as far as an ultra runner first.
Okay. Well, I, grew up doing a lot of different kinds of sports and kind of always excelled at those things. And I had done some running off and on in college and a little bit afterwards, but nothing of the ultra distance until about 2016 when I entered recovery at Healing Transitions, and we started a run club down there called Oak City Recovery Run Club. And I got introduced to a guy down there named Charlie Engle, which is kind of a famous OG kind of ultra runner that lives over in Cary, and started training some with him and doing longer runs. I got introduced to my first 100-mile race with him.
So it sounds to me like something triggered you to want to even consider doing ultra running, because there's runners and there's ultra runners. What made you make that transition and to go into ultra running just from running?
Well, it was mainly meeting Charlie Engle, and then I read his book, Running Man. I read Rich Roll's book, Finding Ultra, and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And, Charlie always mentioned, he's like, you're a tried and true alcoholic. You're good at suffering, so you're automatically going to be good at these really long endurance races because you have that mental capacity to kind of do that thing. And he's really the one that encouraged me to do it. I went down and did this small loop course, kind of similar to Oakwood 24 in Clinton, called the El Zorro 24. And I'd done some longer training runs with him, 20 plus miles. And he told me, just come try it out. He said, just come out. We're going to run for 24 hours. If you run for 5 hours, that's fine. If you run for 3 hours, that's fine. Or if you run the whole time, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I went down there and did really well. I ended up running 100 miles in about 20 hours.
God.
I was just hooked after that.
That's like a one and done thing, just kind of get you going there, right?
Yeah.
It's incredible. And your journey has, you've been racing for ever since then at this point then.
Yeah, I do. I've gotten into, I fell in love with single track trail running and racing, and done quite a few of those. And I do several ultra marathons a year. I try to do about 400-mile trail races every year. And I do the Oakwood 24 and all sorts of the other that's mixed in there too.
Wow. Now, I really want to go into your training because for those of you who aren't looking at Jon right now, this guy's a beast. And he makes me want to become vegan at this point, as I've never seen a vegan built like this guy. But tell me about your nutrition. Tell me about how you were able to stay healthy, because you're not one of the guys who are frequently injured, from what I know.
No, I kind of went through all those overuse injuries kind of early on, and I think it's kind of inevitable if you're going to be an ultra runner. But I've been through IT band and pure formulas and things like that.
Plantar fascia too.
A little bit of that, and I think that was mainly just from figuring out the exact way your body wants to react to things.
Sure.
And once I learned how to incorporate a little more strength training and figure out that I don't have to run 100 miles a week to be a good ultra runner. I used to overtrain in certain ways too. So it's kind of figuring out your body and just where you are.
Yeah. It sounds like from the ultra runners that I've met, and we know many together, that there's a point where maybe running through pain isn't what you should be doing. And it sounds like you've been able to better gauge that over time. Does that sound right?
It is. So when I first started training for these things, it was always about more miles, that kind of thing. And I got to a point when I was just exhausted all the time, hungry, started having overuse injuries and things like that. And I always spent I've always had physical, real day jobs also, spending a lot of time on my feet. Now, gradually learned that, it's more about time on your feet than it is anything else. So I was already doing a lot of that during the day, and then you add in all this running on top of it. But I figured out, now I can run and train, 40, 50 miles a week and be just not, if not better than I was when I was putting in all that high mileage work.
Interesting. And how often do you do your strength training too, Jon?
I don't do a whole lot of weightlifting. I do kind of a kettlebell regimen, usually 2 or 3 days a week.
Oh, nice. Very good. And as far as nutrition, when did you transition over to becoming a vegan?
Yeah, so that's funny, and that involves Charlie Engle and Rich Roll again, reading both of those books, and they talked about, just try this vegan diet. If you don't like it, you can always go back. Mm-hmm. And that's how I like to be introduced to things. It's like, hey, you might as well try this. If you don't like it, you can always go back.
Yeah.
And they were like, it's less inflammation. It's better for your body. You can try all this stuff. And there was a little break-in period where I had to learn, what to cook, what to eat, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And do all these different replacements. But it's just been really good for me. And it's just kind of took me to a different level, I think, as far as training, being able to recover quicker.
That's interesting. So it sounds like by becoming a vegan, it's actually made you into a more resilient, better athlete overall.
Yeah, I think it has.
That's great. So let's go back in time. Before running started, you and I talked about briefly how you have been going through some struggles early in your life. Can you talk about how that occurred and sort of how you become basically recovered from those things or recovering from those things?
Yeah, so I started off typically in high school, doing somewhat normal things that kids do, drinking beer, smoking cigarettes, things like that as an early teenager. And looking back on it now, I probably had an issue all the way back then. Instead of, I was always kind of a shy guy, quiet, not comfortable around, people, places, certain things. Instead of learning how to cope with that, I learned that, alcohol and any kind of substance made that a lot easier on me. Looking back on it, I think that's really what it was. So, I went through high school and college, but I was always drinking excessively, but it was always to kind of a point that I could control somewhat. Even though I overdid it quite a bit, it's still manageable. I could still go to class or have a job or things like that. And it's a kind of a progressive disease, alcoholism is, and it just caught up with me. I had a successful career after college for a few years, but it just caught up with me over time. I started eventually drinking in the morning. It was all I could do to make it through a day to get 5 p.m. and just, unload and have a bunch of drinks. Like that. Even though I was from the outside looking in, I had everything going on great for me. It was just, I was an alcoholic, so I drank when things were good. I drank when things were bad. Didn't matter. I just always wanted to drink. So eventually I got to the point where I started drinking in the mornings, and that's really what kind of began this tumble downhill.
And at what point did you finally decide to get help? I know that some people just struggle with even making that decision.
Yeah, so it was coupled by a lot of different things. I turned into somebody that I didn't know what to think about myself when I looked in the mirror. I was a liar. I was a thief. I had pushed away most of my family and friends and all that. Eventually, I lost it. All the jobs, the insurance, money, and everything that I had. And so I was at a pretty low point where I had just given up, and I was trying to drink myself to death. And that's not a very fun place to be at in life. And now I wound up in institutions, detoxes, hospitals several times, started having alcohol withdrawal seizures.
Oh my God,
drinking so much. And obviously overdoses on other substances, things of that nature. But I'd gotten to the point where I'd had multiple interactions with the law. I was facing serious jail time for felony things of drinking and driving, things of that nature. I was terrified of being locked up. I was terrified of being sober also. And I was kind of at this jumping off point of, where do I go from here? It's either I'm going to go down this terrible road and die, or I'm going to accept help. And luckily I had people in my family that had this disease also. I had a mother that was an Al-Anon, that was very supportive, and they pushed me towards healing transitions to go in and get help.
Tell me more about the healing transition experience, because I know that there are many different groups out there. So what made it more appropriate for you think?
It's just a very unique program. First off, it's a free program. I'd looked at treatment centers forever, and most of them, the first thing they want is your insurance card. And that's not the case at this place. And a lot of them are also want you to stay there. They won't let you leave until you do certain things. That always kind of scared me a little bit at that point in my life. I was very fearful of everything.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you put me in a building and tell me I can't leave for 30 days. I'm probably not going to go in there. So anyways, the healing transition program is great because it's an open door policy. At any time you want to leave, any time in the night, any point during the day, you can just get up, walk out, and say, I'm done with the program. You'd have to start over when you came back. But that's how the program works.
I see. So it's over a policy, but you can leave whenever you want. But once you go in, you got to go back in stage one again, basically.
Yeah, and it's a long term. It's a year-long program. So if you got 6 months in, you had to go back and start over. And there's a lot of guys that do that. It happens. So it would set you back some. But it has a lot of freedom to it as well. You get to have several free hours during the day around Dix Park, downtown Raleigh. You have to go eat at the soup kitchen, which is a very humbling experience every day. And you get to go to all these outside meetings as well, 12-step recovery meetings outside of healing transition. We're really good to get a real world taste of all of it instead of just being in this one little environment like most treatment places. On the weekends, you're free all during the day, and you're doing outside recovery meetings, things like that. So it was that unique program. It was free, it was in the right spot, and there's never a waiting list either. I waited for some places you call, and it's like, well, we'll have a bed in 3 weeks maybe, or something like that. Healing transitions is, we'll take anybody anytime, and we'll have a spot for you. There's a detox there. So that's kind of what drove me to that place. Was they're like, when you're ready, just come.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. And then I guess when you go in there, they have counselors, they have medical staff too. Is that how it works? Or?
Well, it's a non-medical detox in there. So when I first got there, I actually had a seizure and went to Wake Med for a week and came back. And, but the entire program is peer run. So everybody that works there has been through the program at one point.
Wow.
So there's no special counselors or doctors, but we all have this one thing in common. We've all gotten sober in recovery, and we can all relate to each other. So that's how it works is, there's nobody in the program working there that's going to tell you something that they haven't done already.
Got it. And so then through that, it almost seems like a brotherhood too, where people who've been there because they've been through that, they can really relate to you. And they can really guide you along the ways that they've made mistakes and how they've overcome certain things as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a family down there, tight knit. Everybody knows each other, and it's based on this process called community, where you're judged on all your behaviors by all your peers. So three days a week, you meet in this room called community in a circle of chairs, everybody facing each other. And whatever kind of attitudes and behaviors you've had, you get addressed by your peers.
That's really interesting. So accountability too, then.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow. And are there certain behaviors that they basically frown upon, or they say, hey, look, they kind of have to call you out on, or?
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine there's 175 men in this program at any time, and some of them are 5 hours sober, and some of them are a year sober, and there's different transitions or levels you go through in the program. But yeah, I mean, there's personality behaviors that have to be addressed. And it's some of it's just, I wouldn't call it punishment. It's just kind of different things you have to do to kind of curb those behaviors.
Yeah. So then from there, were you a part of F3 at that time, or?
No, I got introduced to F3 while I was down there. They have a workout on Friday afternoons at 2:30 p.m. called the Arena. So I was actually, the first week I was in healing transitions, I went to my first F3 workout on a Friday afternoon in August. blazing hot at 2:30 p.m. But I had all this excess energy built up, and I'd been my body had been sedated for years, and it felt good to sweat, and I was kind of hooked from the beginning from what they said.
Oh, that's great. And along the way, it sounds like met some really good people. We have some common friends in this group too. And do you ever run with like Mike and Scott and all those guys? Or
Yeah, I run with them quite a bit. Mike and I have done some big races together out in Zion. I went out last fall to the Grand Canyon and did Rev to River Ram with them.
Oh, okay.
In a big group. So that was a good time. But yeah, I run with F3 guys all the time. I probably attend 4 to 5 days a week.
Oh, wow.
And I've been pretty much on that schedule for the last 7.5 years.
Oh, that's awesome. So for anyone listening, if you're wondering what F3 is, as we're talking about this, it's Faith, Fitness, and Fellowship. I'm not sure if I got the order right, but I'm also part of this. What is your F3 name?
Brian Addies.
Okay, got it. I am the situation. Nobody guess where I'm from, in Jersey. Cool. So let's go into the Oakwood 24. And I think what really intrigued me about what you're doing is you're helping support healing transitions through this race. It's a 24-hour race. And the amount that you've raised from this, John, is pretty astounding in the last couple of years. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I started that race back in 2018, and I was just looking for a way to give back. In recovery, there's a lot of service positions you can have, but also wanted a way to kind of figure out a way, how can I give back financially to a program that housed me for a complete year and kind of transitioned me back into life, and did that changed the whole trajectory of my life. Is how can I get back to this place?
Yeah.
And that first race I did that I mentioned with Charlie Eagle, called the Elzaro 24, was a little fundraiser for some kind of Sampson County Athletic Department or something like that. People get donations. And I'd seen other ultra runners do similar events. So I was like, I wouldn't mind running another 100-miler this fall, and I'd like to do it locally, and I'd like to get some guys and have it go towards something.
Yeah.
Just the selfish reason, like, oh, look at me, I went and ran 100 miles. It's like, maybe I can do this and have some positive stuff come out of it.
Yeah.
For people other than myself.
Right.
And so I threw it together just in the last couple of weeks, that first December.
Wow.
And we did it and raised a little over $30,000, I think, which is still impressive.
24 hours. Amazing. Yeah.
Some crazy guy
Yeah, right.
for 24 hours. But it's just morphed into that. The first year, it was a lot of guys like, I don't think you can run 100 miles. I'll give you $1 a mile if you do.
Oh, is that right?
And
That's awesome.
so I went out there and did over 100 miles and kind of proved to everybody, like, hey, I can do this. And now you got to pay up.
Yeah.
So it was really fun, but it's morphed into kind of this fantastic community event that we have a lot of people involved with. We have corporate sponsors.
Yeah.
All kinds of things.
That's amazing. Did you ever think that they would get to the size where it's at right now?
No, I didn't think so. I'd still consider it a fairly small event. It's just well supported by our community.
Yeah.
And that's not just me. I'm just kind of the catalyst that started it, but it's really all the people that give money, that come out and run, that support, to get their company to match funds and things like that. So
Yeah.
It's been really well. This year we raised right at $280,000. So that puts us, probably close to $800,000 for the last 6 years with the Healing Transition Program.
That's incredible.
But it all goes directly to them. There's no admin cost or people getting paid or things like that. It's all goes straight to the program, besides just tiny operating costs. But most everything is donated or volunteers help.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it sounds like it's a pretty well supported race, not only in the community, but now it's also gotten attention from the media locally. It sounds like.
Yeah, it has. We've had some good media attention. A lot of the local news networks come out and do interviews and things like that. And now we've gotten into all sorts of different magazines. I have it on sign up now for people that want to get involved officially and have an account on the record. So this year it really took off on the ultra running official side. We'd had people come out and run 1 lap or 10 laps, and people would run hours. This year we had a lot of people sign up, say, hey, I want to run 12 hours. I want to have a count, that kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
And we got them involved. Just about everybody that ran as an official runner this year started a fundraising page too and helped us raise money.
Awesome. Where do you see this going, John? You just kind of keep going with it and see how far you can take it, or you want to take it beyond the Oakwood?
Yeah, well, those are always the questions. I do have a lot of other stuff going on in life with a wife, and I've got a 2-year-old.
Oh,
a stormwater company and that kind of thing too. So it does take a lot of effort, but I'm committed to 10 years of it. So I've got 4 more years, and I'll probably keep doing it after that.
Yeah.
Just because I love it so much. But we'll see where it goes. I'd like to see it one year raise, $500,000 or more each event. I think we're well on our way there.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And hit me up next year. I'd be happy to see what I can contribute as well for next level.
Yeah. We're always looking for sponsors.
Yeah.
And people to set up a tent too. I think people be happy to see you out.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's cool. Tell us about your race directing history. You have Mountain to Sea race series, I think, that you said.
Yeah, that's correct. So another thing I noticed when I started to go run these 100-mile trail races was we have the Umstead 100 here, but it's just, I would consider a road race because, gravel road, you could drive an 18-wheeler on the whole course. Some people would argue with that. Say, oh, it's on a multi-use trail race. But I like single track racing, and I said, there's nothing right around Raleigh that's a single track 100-mile trail race. I have to drive 4 to 5 hours to get to any of the Virginia or Western North Carolina. Yeah. And I started looking around at places of where can we do this. And I went up, I would say the MS Mountains to Sea Trail goes through here. And I didn't realize at that point that there's from Falls Lake Dam to the Eno, there's 73 miles or 76 miles of uninterrupted single track. Really? Along the south shore of Falls Lake. So I just had the idea. I went up there and put a course together, and I think this will be year 4 for that. Wow. So it's been great. We give back to the community through that. Most of the proceeds of that go to Friends of the Mountains Sea Trail. Oh, nice. We also have Healing Transitions involved in aid stations out there. We give some money back to them. And we have a lot of volunteer trail work that the Mountains Sea Trail benefits from and things like that.
That's really cool. And John, as far as like your as a competitor yourself, like what's been your favorite race as an ultra runner?
Well, they're all a little bit different, and I have a lot of fun at all of them. So, I've done some great races. I did one this past summer out in Montana called Crazy Mountain 100. This probably on the top of my list is one of the funnest ones that I've ever done. But I just like running. I love the trail ultra community that's very, very unique and supportive, and it's full of people in recovery. And even if they're not in recovery, it's just people are so relatable in this sport. So it's just been really good for me. So, I just like running, and I like trail running, single track running in the mountains, but also have fun running around the cemetery doing 2-mile laps.
That's really cool. So let's go into some of the training too, John. If you were to, because you've done some coaching too, as I recall, but if you were to like take somebody who has never done an ultra race before, and they're looking to do a 100-miler, what does that look like on a calendar? What does it look like for how you might help them plan their nutrition, the duration, time on their feet, that kind of thing, if they were going to do a race, say in the fall?
It's a little bit different from everybody. So you just have to ask certain questions of, what is your day job like? How busy is your life? Things like that. But the main thing I think people don't train enough for is the mental side of it, that, getting in your head that, it's kind of like any other sport. You have to kind of picture going across the finish line, and that's where you're going to be. You have to commit. Like when I start a race, I committed that, like, barring some catastrophic injury where I break my leg or something, it doesn't matter if I walk it out. If I have to walk the last 8 hours, I'm going to finish that thing. And that's kind of the mindset that you have to have, but it's the mental toughness to get there that, these things hurt while they're happening, but that's okay. That's what makes you feel alive. You signed up for that. Like running 100 miles is going to hurt no matter
what shape
what kind of training you're on.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think a lot of it's training on that. And then besides that, it's time on your feet. It's strength training. It's training specifically for where you're going to run. You know, like a lot of these mountain races, I train in the stairwells at North Hills, and I take trips up to the North Carolina mountains and do, you know, just vertical training days on Grandfather Mountain and things like that. So I think a lot of race specific training helps too. And then it's just mixing in everything, you know, strength training. It's, you know, doing these longer runs on the weekends, but it's also speed work, hill repeats, a little bit of everything.
But it's just over a much longer time horizon. You're looking at 100 miles, right? So you got to kind of pace yourself differently, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, if you weren't a high mileage person, and that's different for everybody. You know, some people might think 30 miles a week is high mileage. Some people might think 120 is high mileage. So you just got to figure out your body and kind of what you want to do with it, and take gradual steps up to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then your body will kind of tell you what you need. You know, most people, they either overtrain or they undereat. And they're doing a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people are tired and groggy and things like that. And it's like, well, you're not eating enough. And if you get somebody to eat enough, they'll figure out, hey, this is the problem the whole time. I just didn't have enough calories in my body. So there's so many different things that can happen to the person. So it's real personalized level to coach someone while they're doing this, but it's always fun and interesting.
Yeah. What is your like go-to nutrition and fuel like, John, as you're going through these races?
Well, some people are very picky. I'm not one of those guys. I've learned to live off just about anything out there that comes up at an aid station. I'm not picky. You know, during a race is sometimes when I'll eat certain things that I normally wouldn't do on a normal basis, like scarfing down a bunch of M&M, drinking soda and things like that, because it's just sugar and calories, and you're kind of looking for anything that you can stomach at that point.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that, you know, salt electrolyte tabs are a must when I'm running these things. Yeah. Staying hydrated is a big part of it. And then it's just calories, you know. Some people have certain things that they only run and they only eat at aid stations. I'm not that guy. I eat peanut butter and jelly and vegan pizza and just about anything they'll throw out there. So I like fried potato wedges when I'm out there throughout the head.
What was there ever a race in your history where you were thinking that, you know, I don't know if I'm gonna make this one, but you still finished through?
Yeah, I've had some really tough races. Like the first few that I did, I would say were not as mountainous or easy races. And yeah, the first time I went and ran a real mountain race called Grindstone 100 up in Virginia, I had no idea how to train for it back then. You know, looking back on it, I was like, I can't believe I ever finished that thing because I didn't know what I was doing by then. I thought going and running around Umstead for 15, 20 miles was going to prepare me. Little did I know that I needed to do like specific training for 4,000 foot climbs up and down continuously throughout the race.
Yeah.
But that one was rough. You know, it was at 6 p.m. start. I ran for over 24 hours and it got dark back into the second night. And that first year I had my wife with me, and I literally had to hike the last 20 miles of the race, which takes a long time. You're talking 6-7 hours just to hike it out while you're hobbling along, because the mountains had just crushed my legs.
Oh, God.
So it's one of those that, like, at that moment, you're like, I'm never doing this. You know, what I'm thinking out here. So, you know, I've had that, and then I did have one DNF at a race called the Hellbender 100, which I've gone back and finished twice after that. Just kind of personal redemption there.
Absolutely.
But I got to 50 miles in that thing, and I think I could have kept going. But it was another race it's up in the Black Mountains around Mount Mitchell and things like that. And if you live around Raleigh, you don't train the right way, it will eat you people.
Oh, so I heard about that.
It's one of those that I threw in the towel that day, but it still kind of eats me up. I made the mistake. I had my wife in a nice warm car at the 50-mile point in a hotel room back in Black Mountain. If she hadn't been out there, I would have been forced to.
Yeah, it's good to know.
There's advice there is, you know, if you want to finish, just leave it as the only way you can get back.
Don't stop. Yeah.
Just either ask somebody in the aid station have to wait 3 hours for a ride or run or hike back.
Oh my God, that's great. Now, how did you meet your wife? Was it an ultra as well, or?
No, we had known each other through some mutual friends. I grew up over in Wilson, North Carolina. We had some mutual friends back in high school. And then the first job I had out of Ely Transitions, she was a manager there. We met while I was there.
Oh, nice. That's very cool. And she's also an ultra runner too, it sounds like.
She does. Well, she was a fitness coach for many years, a personal trainer. And she does harder stuff than I do. Not the long distance stuff, but some of these Spartan races.
Oh, yeah.
Like ultra beast races.
Yeah.
Where you run 32 miles, but you also do like 300 obstacles kind of things. Yeah. Which I don't think I would fare very well.
No way. I don't know, but you build like you probably can, man.
Well, I don't know. We would see, but it sounds tougher to me. But she's a fitness fanatic, loves it, very good at it.
Yeah.
All that. So.
That's cool. In my travels, I've done 2 trifectas for Spartan, and we had the championship race at Vermont in the Killaty Mountains. And it's funny because I never skied it in my life, and here I am going up this mountain, and it was my first experience understanding what the what they call it, switchbacks. So here I am going to the top, and I'm literally crying inside, John, because I'm like, when is this going to stop? It just keeps going up. And finally got through it. It was like 8 hours, an 8 hours race for me, but it was definitely the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Yet here I am going up this mountain, and there are these guys running up the mountain, John, and I'm like, I don't even know how they're doing this. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild to see people that are well versed in certain things, where you're just kind of suffering. All you do is to stay upright, and then you got people running past you. Yeah, I mean, it happens a lot in long races, like 100-mile races. There's guys that nail the negative split, and they run real slow in the beginning, and then I'm at mile 75 and barely clipping along at 14 minutes a mile. Like I'm running right past you like they just started. So.
That's not incredible.
There's so many different unique strategies to this kind of thing, and a lot of this 100-mile stuff is just, learning problem solving.
Yeah.
It's either weather, terrain, how your body feels, nutrition, hydration.
Yeah.
All that kind of thing is pretty much how do I solve these problems of what's going on with my body and around me and keep going.
Yeah. Now, in a 100-mile race, are you at any point allowed to like change shoes or anything like that, or you just kind of have to, whatever you got is what you got, and you're going to finish the race with what you have on?
No, so there's aid stations, I'd say every 6 to 10, 11. Some of them have space a little bit further, 12 miles and things like that, which can be a long time if you're in the woods on single track. It could be 3 to 4 hours in between them, but they allow certain amounts of drop bags on the courses, which some people utilize a lot. And you can change shoes, you can do things like that. You can sit down for a while if you wanted to, but they just have food, drapes. So, if you wanted to put extra shoes or socks in your bags and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of a worst case scenario guy in there that has some extra clothes with, I usually don't change shoes or clothes or anything.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of ultra runners come through our doors since we do specialize in running. One of the things I always want to ask our ultra runners, and for you as well, it seems to be at some point in that run, your mind just kind of goes into another space. Can you talk about how that looks like for you as far as like when you're in the group past 50 miles, past 75 miles, what are the kinds of things that come through your mind?
Well, that could be all sorts of different things. And the best part is when you space off for a while and you don't really realize kind of what you're thinking about.
That's great.
Which is a fun spot to be in. But, I try to break it off into small pieces, just like everything in life is. I'm focused on the next aid station ahead, how far is it, things like that. So I try to just stay present in the moment, appreciate where I am. I try to stay in kind of a spot of gratitude while I'm out there, and sometimes you have to remind yourself of that when the race gets tough. Like, you have an opportunity that most people don't have to be able to do this. There's a small percentage of people that can go run and do stuff for 24 hours. just because it might be financial, it might be physical, it might be mental, that kind of thing. So it's really a gift to be out there to push yourself and even try things like this. So the more you remind yourself of that, the better off you are.
That's awesome. Jon, thank you so much for coming on our show, learning more about you and actually meeting you for the first time. Is there any way that we can help support what you do with Oakwood or with Healing Transition?
Yeah, for sure. So we'll have the Oakwood 24 again this December. We'd love to have you out there. But we have an event webpage. It's always, and it'll be updated soon for next year's race. It's Oakwood 24. No, Healing Transitions /Oakwood24.org. And that'll take you to the event website, or you can just Google Healing Transitions Oakwood 24 and it'll pop up. But there's ways on there to donate online, to get involved with Healing Transitions. You can become a sponsor. There's contact information on there. So any of that. And we also have other races that support it. You know, that MST Endurance Races also supports Healing Transitions. That's coming up March 9th. It's on ultra sign up. MST 100 Endurance Races, if you want to look that up.
Definitely. We'll have all those links on our show notes. So make sure that everybody gets directed to those pages so that they can see how they can help support you as well.
Okay.
Great. Jon, thanks again for coming on our show. For everyone out there, until next time, have an amazing day.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for tuning into today's episode. It really does mean a lot to us. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, or comment if you got at least one or two helpful insights or takeaways to help you get to your next level.